Okay. So now we have all the necessary informations we need. Then we can now start determining the location of the mouse, and based on the different location, then we have to do different operations. So let's do some if statement. If let's see the mouse position's x position, which is the left and right direction. Okay, if it's smaller than something, and that something I want to do is the tolerance, or how much closer to the edge here will it trigger the scroll, right? Of course we can make it equals to 0, but I wanted to have some range there, not just all the way touching the edge. So I need that range here. I might as well go there and define it. So I also wanted to be able to change it. So it's gonna be u property, and the name is gonna be float scroll trigger distance. Okay, it's gonna be the distance from the edge. Okay, if the cursor's location is within this distance from the edge, then it will trigger the scrolling. Okay, it's that simple. So if the x is smaller than that value, okay, that means we're really close to the left side edge. And let's give that value actually maybe make it 10 instead of 20. Just make it super small. Okay, so we have this now. And then if we're within that little distance, we're on the left side of our screen. So let's start scrolling our screen. Then we have the scrolling function already done, so we're gonna go scroll right. Okay, and then the amounts will be the delta second first, right? That's the actually delta time is the argument of the current frame, and then we can then do a delta time. We can also multiply it by something, but we can leave it for later. Okay, so we're just then moving our we're scrolling our camera now, but because we want to scroll, we're on the left side, we want to scroll to the left, so we need to multiply this value by -1 at least. Okay, let's do another if. If our mouse position is bigger than the size of our viewport size x, right, minus the scroll trigger distance, so we're really close to the right edge. If we're really close to the right edge within the distance here, then we want to actually do a scroll right, and then we can do the delta time right away. And you know what to do next, right? If the mouse position dot y is smaller than the scroll trigger distance, which is on the top edge, which means our cursor is really close to the top edge, we're gonna move the scroll up. Okay, and then we're gonna do delta time, and then eventually if mouse position dot y is in this case bigger than the viewport size y minus scroll trigger distance, okay, then we do scroll up to the negative direction, so delta time multiplied by -1. Okay, so now we have established a very simple if statements to determine where the cursor is and what we do on different situations. Now you don't want to do if else, okay? Otherwise it will not. If we are moving the cursor to the corner of, it will only do one of those things. But if there are individual ifs, they will do both. If it's at the corner, of course, when you are at the corner, it's gonna move faster. But I don't think that's a problem. It's not gonna change how game works, right? So. It's not like you have a player and when you press both A and W button it will move faster diagonally, but this is just how the viewport works. So I'm just gonna wanted to make things as simple as possible. Of course you can have 8 if you want to take the corner also into consideration, but that's gonna be a little complicated, so let's not do that. Alright, so I'm gonna save it and let's compile it. Let's wait for it to finish. Alright, let's go play the game. And then you see when I move my cursor around, you see it's moving, but it's just moving really slow. Okay, so we need to of course change the ratio here. We want it to multiply by something because delta time is actually a very small value here. So we probably need another public variable that we can change in the editor. So float scroll, let's call this cursor scroll speed, or mouse scroll speed. Okay, let's make it 20 also, but we can change those two things in the different ways. So in this case, we're gonna use this one, okay, here, and multiply it on top of the delta time. That way it's gonna be faster. In this case, 20 times faster, and hopefully it will be noticeable enough. Of course, we can change it later in the viewport, in the editor, just to make things, just to see what happens. Okay, so that should be the functionality we need for the cursor. Let's wait for it to finish and then check it. Alright, now if I move the cursor up and down, left and right, you can see now I'm moving. Here I'm moving my cursor, but of course you cannot see it, and that's actually a major problem here. So let's fix that then. Let's go back to the player controller. To see the cursor, you can actually go back to the constructor here and then just make flip a boolean called bShowMouseCursor. Okay, and make it true. So that's going to show the mouse cursor. Okay, let's compile. Don't know why it's slower than Unreal Engine 4.16. I'm using 4.17 now. But anyway, oh, not seeing the cursor now. bShowMouseCursor, maybe it's not passed along to the new blueprint here, so I need to go there. Yeah, it's not passed along to the children class sometimes. So let's check that out. So the things are the same, right? This one, ShowMouseCursor is exactly the same thing here. We're just doing it in a coding way, but apparently it has to be also fixed here because the children class sometimes doesn't really inherit the parent class. So let's go play now. You can see my cursor is now in the viewport, and when I move the cursor to different edges, it's doing exactly what I needed to do. Okay, and I can use WSAD to do the same thing. And of course, I can go here to the class, to the player controller class, and change the scroll speed. If I want it to be faster, maybe 40 instead of 20, I can of course do that, and it's gonna be scrolling faster. Okay, cool. Still not that fast, maybe 100, just to see the difference. Okay, now I'm going pretty fast. Alright, another problem is when you play the game, right, it works okay, but when you click somewhere, it will go outside of the viewport, and that's not going to be good. So we have to be able to lock the mouse or the cursor into the viewport. Okay, so let's do that little detail here. To lock the cursor to the viewport, okay, and it's better to do that in the begin play instead of the constructor. So let's go back to the because if you do that in the constructor, some of the things you're referencing from may not exist yet, and that's going to cause a violation of empty pointer or no pointer, and that's going to cause the entire engine to crash. Anyway, not doing that. Okay, so let's create the begin play function here as a public function. Void begin play. Here, this one. Okay, let's override it, and of course call super first. So super begin play, and then we do the lock the cursor to the viewport. So what we need to do is we need to first get our word first. Okay, and then after that, underneath get word, we need to get the game viewport. Okay, and then we need to know the viewport. Okay. Oh, actually, let's first set the mouse lock mode, and it's gonna be set to the lock always, so it's always gonna be locked inside of the viewport. And then let's do get word again, and then get game viewport again, and then get the viewport, the actual viewport, and then we lock the mouse to it. Okay, and then pass in true. And I have two arrows here. It doesn't know what a word is. Okay, so let's go here and look for the header file. It's actually not here. This one here, the U word. The header file will be underneath the engine word. Okay, so we need that header to be included in order to use that. So let's go here and then include that. So now it knows what the U word class is. Okay, let's compile now, and we should be able to see our cursor always be constrained to the viewport now. No matter what we do, like clicking or do anything, it should be always locked to the viewport, which is basically a lot of games are having. So let's play the game now, and then I can move around. When I click, I can still move around. Okay. The problem here is when I touch the top, it goes to the diagonal direction. Okay. This looks like a bug, but what actually happens is that maybe it's because of the viewport is inside of the editor, so there is some offset there. You can of course press F7, F11, and F11 again just to re-evaluate it, and everything goes back to normal. Okay, so if you click it, go there, and it will not happen to a actual Windows version of it. If you go play in a standalone game, that problem will not be there. Okay, just be aware of that little bug here. I mean, by only clicking on the viewport, shouldn't be able to change anything, right? So, alright, so that's the scrolling of RTS games. Okay, that's how you do it, or at least one of the ways. And I'm doing it in a totally C++ way. It's just easier for me because I learned it first. But of course you can try the blueprint way. Okay, it's supposed to be easier to set up, so I encourage you, if you want to do it in a blueprint way, you just need to find out the equivalent commands. Of course, some of the things you cannot get, like maybe you cannot get the viewport. I'm not sure if you cannot get anything else, but it's pretty similar here. I prefer to use C++ even for basic functionalities, just because it's just very straightforward to me. It's like plain text going from top to the bottom. Using Blueprint, you will end up with a lot of networks, node-based networks, and sometimes it's confusing. It's more confusing than the this kind of way. Okay, so that's gonna be the entire tutorial. And if you want to implement more, like zoom in, maybe you can try to go for the Pong here. Remember, we have a spring arm here, right? And you do know that in the Pong blueprint, the spring arm's target arm length can of course determine how far away, so that value could be potentially a candidate that you can use to achieve zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so I'll leave that for you to figure out, and that's gonna be the entire tutorial. So thanks for watching, and I will see you maybe in the next tutorial.